All right, let's move on now with a look through the top headlines in today's international newspapers. Belle Lupton back here with us in the studio for that. Hi there, Belle.
Hi, Kat.
And no surprise, really, we're going to start across the channel in the UK. The search for a new Prime Minister is over much more quickly than anyone had really expected. It is Theresa May.
It is, and thankfully for the British press, her name invites all sorts of wordplays and puns. So I'm going to take you through a few of them. May Day is from the newspaper. It's on their front page, and they are still covering what they call Britain's political crisis, hence the May Day. Then going over to Metro, another day of mayhem for that tabloid, which catalogues the latest events in the post-Brexit saga. Moving on to the Daily Star, I'll make Britain great again, come what may, of course. So they're going with as many puns as they can on her name, of course.
I'm sure she's going to enjoy that for the next few years. What are the papers making of the way that Theresa May actually got the job?
Well, the Daily Mail, for one, calls it a coronation, so hinting at the fact that there was no vote either by the general public or even by the Conservative members to get her into power. The Independent carries on with that theme, asking, can you get into number 10, that's obviously where the Prime Minister lives, without a general election, a leadership runoff or a vote of the party membership? Yes, Prime Minister, with a big picture of her.
Yeah, this is something that's probably quite unusual for some of our international viewers who aren't from the UK. Because, you just have to be the leader of the party that has a majority in Parliament to be Prime Minister. It's not a presidential-style election, is it?
Exactly, and we saw that with Gordon Brown, which, of course, the Daily Mirror reminds Theresa May of her attitude when Gordon Brown had exactly the same situation, came into essentially the Prime Minister role without a general election. Daily Mirror reminds May that that she was chosen by just 0.0004% of the total electorate.
That's not many people.
Not many people. And all of them who voted for her, of course, or who chose her, as it were, are all Tories. Now, back in 2007, the Mirror reminds Theresa May, she demanded that Gordon Brown hold a general election because he didn't have a democratic mandate to rule.
Interesting.
So the Mirror throws her own words back at her and says, an early election, bring it on. So it's very clear what they want. The Daily Telegraph has this little cartoon where it shows her as the only remainer from the EU referendum in that leadership contest. All those who were going for Brexit leaving, well, they did just what they wanted to do and left also the leadership campaign there. And The Sun is the only paper that's chosen not to show on its front page a picture of Theresa May's smile. No, what it's done is shown a picture of her shoe instead. The jazzy kitten heels that she likes to wear that have been papped before seem to be her most important facet, possibly more than her political credentials. And of course, we have to ask whether that's because she's a woman, and the headline heel boys might suggest that her gender is more important to The Sun. And that just speaks to an article that was doing the rounds from Foreign Policy magazine called The Tragic Downfall of the British Media. So this article bemoans the fact that the country that boasts having produced the BBC and the Economist, both bastions of journalism, failed so spectacularly at journalism, particularly in the lead up to Brexit.
Oh, harsh words there. All right, let's move on to Asia now. The Hague, as we've been reporting, it has this controversial arbitration tribunal based there, and they're going to be ruling on whether territory in the South China Sea can be exploited by China, by the Philippines, by neither.
Absolutely. And we'll start in China, where, perhaps unsurprisingly, the official China Daily is unequivocal. It says the Hague Arbitration Tribunal is invalid. That's its quote. And it quotes several law professionals from around the world saying that The Hague doesn't have a mandate to arbitrate this dispute because it was initiated unilaterally by the Philippines without the Chinese say-so. So China never said, oh, right, we'll allow this Hague tribunal to happen. Now, the law professors or professionals that it quotes, some of them are actually Americans, say that the US is behind the Philippines' effort to stir up the situation, this is the words of the China Daily, because it wants to get back to those military bases. China, it says, is not getting a fair stake. Let's move over to the Philippine Daily Inquirer, so the other side of the debate. Now, again, unsurprisingly, they are focusing on Chinese aggression. There's a photo on the front page of a Coast Guard firing water cannon on Filipino fishermen off the disputed Scarborough Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. And then inside there's an opinion piece in which the author points to a masterstroke in diplomacy from the new president, Rodrigo Duterte, who announced he was willing to start bilateral negotiations with China on the South China Sea, whichever way The Hague rules. Now, that, of course, the opinion piece says would anger Washington because it's been egging on the Philippines to confront China's so-called hegemonic ambition in the area. If the two countries could work together, they could rid themselves of that US influence that they see in the area. The paper's cartoon, just to finish on that one, shows this as a battle not between China and the Philippines, but actually a proxy battle, essentially, between China and the US.
We've just got time for a very quick word about a very special particular novel from Iraq that's going to be translated into English by a UK publisher.
Yep, it's a manuscript carried out of Iraq by the writer's daughter in 2003 about a tribe in the Euphrates 1,500 years ago, banned from sale in Jordan when they tried to publish it. It's apparently a mix between Game of Thrones and a bit of House of Cards. So far, so uninspiring. But the real USP is the author, who calls himself the author, or called himself the author, because it's Saddam Hussein.
Goodness me.
Was the author, yes. And this wasn't his first book. This is actually his fourth novel. One of them was a semi-autobiographical. I'll give you the verdict. The New York Times described it as a forgettable piece of pulp. Well, I'll leave the rest to your imagination.
We'll have to read it and find out, won't we? Thanks very much, Belle Lupton there with a look through the international papers. Time for a short break now here on Live from Paris. Do stay tuned.